Part 27. Whistleblower Testimony. Whistleblowers who tried to expose the grooming gangs were systematically silenced, discredited, and punished. On occasion, their careers and reputations were also tarnished. Social care professionals, campaigners, and public activists who raised evidence of still ongoing grooming, trafficking, financial abuse of children in care, and institutional cover-ups faced suspension, defamation proceedings, dawn raids, asset freezes, fabricated charges, gagging bail conditions, and career-ending isolation. Authorities assured them that full investigations had taken place, when none had occurred and records were destroyed. Senior officers and elected members acknowledged concerns as credible, yet took no remedial action. The state did not merely ignore whistleblowers, it punished them to protect the gangs and its own reputation. We wish to correct for that, so we invited these whistleblowers to our inquiry. Below are some of their testimonies. 1. A social worker. Our whistleblower social worker is an experienced children's social care professional with nearly 4 decades of service. Her specialist work focused on leading care services and safeguarding highly vulnerable young people. In February 2018, she raised extensive whistleblowing disclosures concerning financial abuse of young people, misuse of public funds, unlawful sanctions, illegal evictions, racism towards children in care, and systemic failures to safeguard against sexual and criminal exploitation. She was assured that a comprehensive investigation would occur. In the event, responses were delayed, fragmented, and opaque. Senior officers later acknowledged that financial abuse was likely, but claimed proof was impossible due to missing records. She was informed that shredders had been purchased at units and that records may have been destroyed. Despite this, the disclosure was deemed reviewed without her ever having been interviewed. She describes repeated safeguarding failures, witnessed while she was interim co-manager of semi-independent units, including children with severe mental health needs placed unsafely, repeated missing episodes, untreated exploitation risks, and delayed police or mental health intervention. Her evidence illustrates escalating harm, including self-harm, sexual exploitation, criminal exploitation, and unlawful housing practices. After raising these concerns, she experienced retaliation, including removal of payments, suspension based on unfounded allegations, and professional isolation. Senior leadership and elected members repeatedly failed to engage meaningfully with her concerns. She concludes that the local council prioritized reputational and financial considerations over child safety, leaving ongoing risks unaddressed. 2. Cavan Vines, Rotherham campaigner. Cavan compiled multi-agency records from 2003 onwards. These showed that police, councils, and MPs knew about organized grooming by Pakistani Muslim gangs, years before any public admission. Vines engaged with national media and provided evidence to senior officials. He states that one of the interviews in which he partook, namely, with Sky News, was misrepresented, which led to defamation proceedings that rendered him bankrupt and ruined much of his life. He alleges perjury by MPs and a failure by police to investigate it. The pattern demonstrates that early whistleblowing on institutional awareness produced retaliation rather than protection for victims. 3. Tommy Robinson, national activist. Tommy Robinson documented grooming patterns after the exploitation of a close female relative at age 14. He heard hundreds of similar accounts from families across England. When he formed the English Defence League and spoke publicly, South Yorkshire police allegedly subjected him to repeated arrests and dawn raids on his family homes. He reportedly also faced fabricated charges, asset freezes, and threats that forced repeated relocations. The state treated public whistleblowing on the ethnic and religious patterns of the gangs as more dangerous than the gangs themselves. After Robinson repeatedly detailed the scale of Muslim grooming gangs across Britain, the state responded with targeted legal action that in effect silenced him. In May 2018, he live-streamed outside Leeds Crown Court while defendants in a major grooming gang trial were entering the building. He was immediately arrested for breaching the peace and charged with contempt of court for violating reporting restrictions that protected the defendants. He was sentenced to 13 months in prison on the same day. Although released after 2 months on appeal, the case was reheard, and in July 2019 he was re-sentenced to 9 months imprisonment. This sentence combined 6 months for the Leeds offence with 3 months for breaking an earlier suspended contempt order related to a similar incident at Canterbury Crown Court in 2017. The timing and nature of these prosecutions to many suggest clear retaliation. Robinson had been one of the most high-profile voices, highlighting the grooming gang scandal at a time when authorities in Rotherham, Rochdale, and elsewhere were still denying its existence or suppressing evidence. Instead of investigating the gangs he identified, the state focused its resources on imprisoning the man who had drawn public attention to them. The contempt charges ensured that his reporting on ongoing trials was criminalized while the grooming networks continued to operate. There is a prima facie case that the repeated use of the courts against Robinson was not about fair justice, but about punishing one of the individuals who forced the grooming gang scandal into the open long before official institutions were willing to act. 4. Fred. Fred is a father and information technology specialist with approximately 6 years' experience in child protection work. His involvement began after his own daughters were groomed offline by a former partner of their mother. His eldest daughter recognized the risk and disclosed the situation, enabling Fred to intervene promptly and protect his children. This experience prompted him to join an online child protection team. For around 2 years, Fred worked as a decoy, posing as a child online to identify adults seeking to groom and sexually exploit children. He was exposed to highly disturbing sexual communications, which had a severe psychological impact and eventually led him to step back from decoy duties. Leveraging his professional background, Fred shifted his focus to developing tools for digital tracking, perpetrator identification, and forensic evidence gathering. His work is designed to produce court-ready evidence. He has collaborated with multiple British child protection teams and interfaced with various police forces, including specialist online child protection units. To date, Fred has assisted in the identification, tracking, and reporting of nearly 1,300 suspected child sexual predators. These cases have resulted in arrests, prosecutions, and convictions. At least 4 cases involved attempted child trafficking. He has also identified and provided technical data leading to the shutdown of approximately 30 deep web servers hosting large volumes of child sexual abuse material. Fred has observed that many offenders are repeat perpetrators, with some convicted multiple times. In his view, rehabilitation is ineffective for this category of offender, and current sentencing practices frequently fail to act as a deterrent, with some individuals receiving only community orders despite strong evidence. Fred believes that online grooming could be substantially reduced or eliminated through existing technology and artificial intelligence. Such systems could detect grooming behaviors in real time, based on established models. A recurring pattern in the cases Fred has supported is that the vast majority of suspects initiate contact with decoys, suggesting they are actively targeting multiple children. He highlighted one specific case on one platform involving an individual who presented publicly as a Quran and Arabic tutor linked to a mosque and teaching center at 2 universities. Extensive digital evidence, including chat logs, IP data, and location information, was submitted to the police. Despite this, the individual appeared to leave Britain shortly after, later resurfacing in the country and abroad while the investigation remained open. Fred expressed concern about the lack of apparent action in this case, despite strong evidence, and noted subsequent cyber attacks on his systems originating from the Middle East. Fred has faced direct personal threats, including a life threat from a serious repeat offender, with prior convictions for abduction, torture, and sexual assault. Fred provided this testimony to highlight the scale of online grooming, technological opportunities for prevention, and systemic gaps that allow perpetrators to continue offending. Part 28. Demographics and Culture. Perpetrators from Pakistani Muslim and other Muslim backgrounds formed the core of the grooming gangs nationwide. They operated under an honor and shame clan code that treated non-Muslim girls, especially white working-class girls, as property available for sexual use because these girls had no male protectors who could retaliate. The men began by showering the girls with attention, gifts, alcohol, and drugs. This then escalated to coercion, gang rape, and trafficking. They transported victims across towns, shared them with friends and family, and sometimes forced conversions to Islam followed by religious marriages. The Muslim men justified the abuse by describing white British girls as easy, trash, or morally inferior. The same networks targeted Sikh girls until Sikh communities mobilized collective male protection and forced the gangs to withdraw. British girls were not permitted the same defense. This religiously framed exploitation was repeated in every major town and city and beyond. Britain has seen a series of high-profile convictions for organized group-based child sexual exploitation, commonly referred to as grooming gangs. However, The number of convictions amount only to a small proportion of the men who carried out the crimes. In cases where perpetrators of Pakistani heritage were named publicly in court records or reports, their names have consistently been Muslim in character. According to the 2021 census for England and Wales, around 93% of individuals identifying as Pakistani by ethnicity also identified as Muslim, with only about 1% following another religion, the remainder having no faith recorded. Researcher Peter McLaughlin in his book, Easy Meat, 2016, compiled a comprehensive list of grooming gang convictions from 1997 to 2018, with updates in subsequent analyses, drawing from published court outcomes. His examination of names indicated that approximately 87% of those convicted bore distinctively Muslim names, which was a figure echoed in related analyses far exceeding the Muslim proportion, around 6% of the general population of Britain. The majority of these convicted groups consisted entirely of men from Muslim backgrounds. These groups are predominantly of Pakistani heritage, especially when the group exceeds 10 or more members. The larger group size dynamic of Pakistani perpetrators is on display in major prosecutions and official reviews from locations such as Rochdale, Rotherham, Huddersfield, Oxford, Telford, and others. Other convictions have involved groups primarily composed of Muslims from non-Pakistani origins, demonstrating that the issue is not necessarily confined to one ethnic group. 2 Somali origin gangs in Bristol. A mainly African heritage gang in Banbury. 3 Iranians in Chelmsford. 3 Syrians and 1 Kuwaiti in Newcastle. 2 Turkishmen in Somerset. A Romanian grooming gang in Rotherham. The large Newcastle, Operation Sanctuary case, involving 17 men and 1 woman from diverse Muslim backgrounds, Albanian, Kurdish, Bangladeshi, Indian, Turkish, Iranian, Iraqi, Pakistani, and Eastern European heritage. Nearly all published names were Islamic. These patterns are drawn from judicial proceedings, sentencing records, official inquiries, such as those into Rotherham, Rochdale, and others, and public reporting on concluded cases. Recent developments, including ongoing reviews and data audits, e.g., national audits and reopened historic cases, continue to examine the scale, characteristics, and patterns of such offending. With regard to the scale of the crimes, this is reflected in conviction records, police data from relevant force areas, and audits, all of which note overrepresentation of South Asian, Pakistani heritage men in certain group-based cases while acknowledging data limitations on ethnicity nationwide. Smaller, non-Muslim groups often feature different dynamics or victim profiles compared with the classic multi-offender grooming model in larger operations. The term Asian has frequently been applied in media, official statements, and public discourse to describe the perpetrators in grooming gang cases across Britain. This broad labeling can be misleading, however, because Britain hosts a substantial number of non-Muslim Asian populations, such as Hindus and Sikhs from India, Buddhists from Japan, and Christians from the Philippines and Vietnam. These populations, with only very rare exceptions, have had no involvement in these offences. In fact, members of these communities have more often appeared as victims than as perpetrators in the grooming gang cases that have come to light. Dr. Ella Hill, a survivor of the Rotherham grooming gangs and now a qualified doctor, has courageously shared her experiences and reflections in multiple public forums, including testimony to the 2022 J Inquiry, a July 2020 podcast interview, and a 2018 article in The Independent. Her report is entirely consistent with the evidence that was heard at the RGI. Following years of repeated sexual violence, severe beatings, and attempted murder by her abusers, her family members were forced to change their surnames and relocate to another part of the country so that she could complete her schooling and later pursue and obtain a medical degree. In her accounts, Dr. Hill has consistently described the abuse as being both racially and religiously aggravated. She was explicitly told during the incidents that the attacks were happening because she was white and because she was Christian. She explained that she was initially groomed and then trafficked by a Pakistani Muslim boyfriend to groups of Muslim men. She was repeatedly taken to various houses and flats where she was sexually abused, physically assaulted, and tortured. Even after she tried to escape and hide, her main perpetrator tracked her down, broke into her home, and attempted to kill her on 5 separate occasions. She survived these attacks but was left with extensive lacerations and bruising. On at least 5 occasions she approached the police, presenting medical evidence of her injuries, yet each time she was told there was nothing they could do and her evidence was not accepted. Dr. Hill has emphasized that the verbal abuse she endured was saturated with both racial and religious slurs. While being beaten, she was repeatedly called a white slag, a white whore, a white cunt, and simultaneously condemned as a non-Muslim who deserved punishment for failing to follow Islamic rules. Her abusers, she said, operated according to what she termed grooming gang ideology, under which they believed their crimes were religiously justified. In fuller detail, in her submission incorporated into Associate Professor Lisa Oakley's evidence to the 2022 J inquiry, Dr. Hill stated, "I was told that I must respect their religion. This was the first of many confusing lies that I was forced to believe. I was told that to show the Muslims respect, I mustn't eat pork. I was told that Muslim girls are good and pure, and stay virgins until marriage, but all white girls are slags, and they all sleep with hundreds of people. I was told white girls are trash. They are all whores. They are lower than shit under your shoe. They don't obey Allah, so they deserve to be punished. They don't dress modestly. Muslim women are pure because they cover down to their ankles, and down to their wrists, and the hem of their top comes down below their knees. White girls show the curves of their body, so they are asking for it. They should be sexually abused as punishment for not obeying Allah. Kafir non-Muslim girls are worthless. Sex with a kafir girl doesn't count as adultery. Only sex with a Muslim woman counts as adultery. If you're not a virgin before marriage, you should be beaten. Many times I was told that the Quran says, if one of your wives disobeys you, beat her. This was often quoted to me before they beat me with their hands. They believed they had a position of religious moral superiority over non-believers. They believed it was their duty to punish us, as they believed that doing so made them good Muslims. This is what they were taught by their mothers. They were taught that witches in Pakistan are blonde, so blondes are more evil, and they deserve worse punishment. I was told that in Islam, if a girl or woman looks at a man who isn't her brother, father or her husband, then that means she wants to have sex with him. So I was told to look at the floor when I was around Muslim men. So when I did look at a waiter in a restaurant, I was then taken away to be gang raped as punishment. I was told that according to their faith community, girls are old enough for sex when they start their periods, at age 11. Many of us had to endure the sexual act of thighing, Arabic mufakada, which I'm now told is a religiously sanctioned way of molesting children according to some Islamic scriptures. You have to lie down on your back with your legs straight together, and they straddle you and fuck between your thighs. I was beaten, strangled, suffocated, and my head held under water, tortured, kicked, and sexually assaulted over 100 times. I was told that if you don't scream when you're sexually assaulted, then you're consenting to the assault, so you should be stoned to death. I was told that Muslim girls know this, because the Quran says that Aisha's silence was her consent to the marriage to Muhammad. So Muslim girls know to scream, but white girls don't. So that's their fault, because they're not Muslim. When I did wear a headscarf, to try to protect myself from being sexually assaulted, I was told to get it off, and they penetrated me again. I now know that all these so-called ways to protect yourself from being molested are myths used to excuse perpetrators' criminal behavior. They threatened to kill my parents if my parents tried to stop me seeing them. I was intimidated with guns, and threatened with body parts being cut off with knives. When I tried to escape, I was told that I had offended their honor, so they had to spill my blood. They did this in an honor attack. All of the abuse that I experienced was linked to spiritual abuse or religious abuse. Religious scriptures were used as tools of control to force me to conform to their will. I was not allowed to question these religious beliefs. They used their religious, moral authority, and self-proclaimed elitism to control me through use of scripture, forced confessions, censorship of decision-making, requirement of secrecy and silence, isolation, excessive shaming and punishment around sexuality, and requiring unquestioning obedience. I experienced this as a deeply personal, terrifying physical, emotional and spiritual attack. Every time they quoted scripture, it was very hard to argue with. To them, it was like I was arguing with God. To me, it was actually like I was arguing with the devil. They used their so-called religious moral authority to do the most horrific, immoral acts imaginable. The entirely typical experiences of survivors known as Sarah and Anna, both of whom were helped by the Christian Legal Center, provide further illustration of the religious elements reported in some grooming gang cases. Sarah endured a 12-year ordeal after being kidnapped from the street at the age of 15. During this period, she was repeatedly drugged with Valium, beaten, and sexually abused. At one point, Her abuser presented her with a certificate from the mosque and declared that they were married according to Islamic rites. Later, he divorced her under Sharia procedure simply by stating, "I divorce you 3 times." She was then immediately married in a ceremony conducted by an imam to a man she did not know. Within minutes of the ceremony ending, while the wedding party continued downstairs, she was penetrated sexually by her new husband. Over the years, Sarah was subjected to 8 forced abortions, one of them 5 months into pregnancy. When she accompanied her abuser to medical appointments, he required her to wear a hijab and walk 5 feet behind him. She was compelled to learn the Quran in Arabic and permitted to speak only Urdu and Punjabi. She was also made to cook and clean for the gang members who abused her. Sarah made several unsuccessful attempts to escape. On one occasion, after she reported her kidnapping to the police, she was interviewed by a Muslim officer who switched off the tape recorder and instructed her to drop her allegations because of lack of evidence. She later learned that this officer was imprisoned for child sex offenses. In a separate case, Anna was living in a children's home in Bradford in 2002. From the age of 13, she was sexually assaulted and abused while in the home, and at 15 she was forced into a Sharia marriage. Her social worker attended the marriage ceremony and permitted her husband's parents to foster her after she became pregnant. The parents received a fostering allowance from the state. Anna described her situation as one of domestic slavery, in which she was treated like a maid and repeatedly sexually abused by dozens of men. In Britain, reports from the Metropolitan Police in London alone have indicated an average of 1,125 assaults per year involving unlicensed taxi drivers. A significant proportion of the offenders in these cases have been identified as Muslim. A further form of exploitation associated with certain Muslim communities across Britain is marriage trafficking. The Forced Marriage Unit, FMU, handled 801 cases in 2024 concerning girls and women resident in the country who were forced into marriage with men, providing direct support in 229 of those instances. Among the 280 cases where the focus country was recorded in 2023, the 6 countries accounting for the highest numbers were Pakistan, 45%, Bangladesh, 13%, Afghanistan, 7%, India, 3%, Somalia, 3%, and Nigeria, 2%. Of these 6, all except India and Nigeria have overwhelmingly Muslim populations. Earlier Home Office figures from 2009 showed that 90% of forced marriage victims in Britain were Muslim. In more recent years, however, the FMU has ceased collecting or publishing data on the religion of those involved, a shift that echoes patterns of avoidance seen during the grooming gang investigations. An FMU report stated, "Forced marriage is not a problem specific to one country, religion, or culture. The FMU does not record data on religion. No major faith in the UK advocates forced marriage. Freely given consent is a prerequisite of Christian, Hindu, Jewish, Muslim, and Sikh marriages. Although forced marriage occurs in various communities and is not unique to Muslims, statistics show a clear overrepresentation of Muslims among those involved in forced marriage cases. It is also inaccurate to claim that Islam mandates a woman's consent for marriage. Similar patterns of offenses disproportionately involving Muslim men have been reported in other Western countries with significant Muslim immigrant populations. In the Netherlands, considerable media coverage has focused on so-called lover boys, who are predominantly Moroccan Muslim men. These individuals first seduce Dutch girls, often teenagers, and then coerce them into prostitution in order to profit from their earnings. According to a 2001 report by the Amsterdam-based child rights organization, approximately 5,000 ordinary Dutch schoolgirls aged 13 or 14 from typical family backgrounds had been lured into prostitution by lover boys. The documentary film, Lover Boys, directed by Julia Rook, follows the work of Ibrahim, a Dutch-Moroccan social worker supporting both the perpetrators and their victims. In Sweden, a 2021 academic study examining Swedish rape offenders concluded that nearly half of the convicted individuals were born outside Sweden, with immigrants from the Middle East and North Africa being markedly overrepresented among them. In Australia, 9 Lebanese Muslim men were convicted in 2002 of gang raping white girls. Contemporary media reports at the time indicated that police were aware of over 60 female victims linked to the group, though the convictions related to the sexual abuse of 7 girls. Police seized a mobile phone message from one of the perpetrators that read, "When you are feeling down, bash a Christian or Catholic and lift up." Part 29. Statistics. Offender data from the 2017 Quilliam Foundation analysis, together with recent independent investigations, reveal a consistent, disproportionate involvement of Muslim men, overwhelmingly of Pakistani heritage, in group-based CSE. The 250,000 figure is not a precise count. No such count exists because the British state has failed to record it. But we may regard it as a conservative estimate that accounts for the organized, repeated nature of the abuse and decades of institutional concealment, many girls sexually assaulted hundreds of times by multiple perpetrators. Analysis of 264 convictions for group-based child sexual exploitation from 2005 to 2017 found that 84%, 222 offenders, were South Asian, with the vast majority Pakistani Muslim. Only 7% were white, and 8% black. Additional context from expert commentary includes statements by Dr. Taj Hagi, an imam at the Oxford Islamic Congregation, who observed that virtually every individual in these grooming gangs appears to be Muslim, estimating that 95% of those involved are of Muslim faith. As previously stated, Peter McLaughlin's research indicates that approximately 87% of grooming gang convictions were of people with distinctively Muslim names. These figures stand in marked contrast to the much smaller proportion of Pakistani or Muslim communities within the overall population of modern Britain, Muslims approximately 6.5% and Pakistanis around 2.1%, according to the most recent census data. Multiple examinations, including police data from various forces, national audits and independent reviews, have documented this overrepresentation in group-based offending of this nature, even as some earlier official narratives emphasized no single community profile or sought to downplay ethnic patterns. The number of reported sexual assaults in the United Kingdom has risen substantially since 1997, when the era of large-scale mass immigration into the country commenced under Blair. Official police recorded crime data, for England and Wales, indicate that sexual assault offences stood at approximately 8,593 in the year 2000. A figure closely aligned with levels observed in the late 1990s prior to major changes in recording practices. By the year ending March 2025, police recorded that sexual assault offences had increased to over 70,000, according to figures published by the Office for National Statistics, reflecting a rise exceeding 800%, even after accounting for population growth of around 15% during the intervening years. In stark contrast, Poland, which maintained relatively low levels of immigration throughout the same period, has experienced a decline in reported sexual assaults. Polish National Police data showed 2,399 recorded sex offences in 2000, falling to 1,127 by 2023. A reduction of more than 50%. With a stable population of approximately 38 million, this equates to a per capita rate of around 3 sexual assaults per 100,000 residents in recent years, compared with over 100 per 100,000 in the United Kingdom. These comparative patterns drawn from official sources highlight divergent trends between the two nations. References include the ONS Bulletin on Sexual Offences in England and Wales, for the year ending March 2025, the Home Office Historical Police Recorded Crime Tables, and Eurostat Police Recorded Offences data, alongside Polish national statistics compiled via Statista for the period covering 2000 to 2023. Per capita calculations further underscore the scale of the disparity when relative population sizes are considered. These figures indicate that the grooming gangs are a specific ethno-religious phenomenon, with Muslims, especially Pakistani Muslims, significantly overrepresented.